So welcome back. So now I want to talk to you about the conjunction before. So nice and straightforward. If you've got before followed by a noun or a pronoun, like in my examples, before you, before midnight, before Hubert, you quite simply use the conjunction avant and then just pop in the noun or the pronoun. Don't even need to think about the subjunctive. Then another version of the word before is avant deux. Now you use avant deux if you've got before and then a verb in the ing form with no subject. So for example, before going, before thinking, before saying, before making, you get the idea. So you use avant deux and then an infinitive. So for example, before thinking, avant de penser. Before going, avant d'aller. That type of idea. So nice and straightforward. But then of course we have got a slightly more complicated version, and that's the word before when it's followed by a subject and a verb. Okay, so in that case you use the third permutation of before, which is the version avant que. If you use avant que, you need to have a subject after it, and then you need to have a subjunctive. So if you have a look at my example there, you can see that we've got the word before, then it's got a subject after it, which is Hubert, and then you've got a verb. So therefore we're going to have avant que, then our subject Hubert, and then that's going to trigger a subjunctive. Okay, so three versions of before, just quite simply avant, and then a noun or a pronoun, avant deux, and an infinitive, if the verb is just quite simply in the ing form with no subject, or third option is avant que, then a subject, and then a subjunctive. Okay, I'm going to move on now to another conjunction, and that's the conjunction until. Okay, two different versions of until. You can see at the top, nice straightforward one, we've got the conjunction jusqu'à, and if it's followed by a noun, so for example, until lunch, I'm going to work until lunch, jusqu'à, and I've just noticed a mistake, sorry, it should of course be jusqu'au déjeuner. Sorry about that. Okay, so jusqu'au déjeuner, let's pretend that's not there. Gosh, terrible things falling apart. Okay, and then underneath we've got, if you've got until followed by a subject and a verb, like in my example, he'll do such thing until he goes to Paris, then you're not going to use jusqu'à, instead you're going to use jusqu'à ce que. Okay, and jusqu'à ce que triggers a subjunctive, as you can see in my example. So remember, until plus a noun, jusqu'à, until, and then if there's a subject and a verb, jusqu'à ce que plus a subjunctive. Now, I might just be tempted to pause this video, write that up, and then come back to it, because I'm just going to teach you something slightly more complicated now, not terribly so, but the word without. So, initially, the word for without is sans, if it's followed by a noun or a pronoun. Sans toi, sans Saïd, sans amour, without a word. But if you're going to have the word without and then a verb in the ing form, as you can see in my example, you use the word sans, don't put de in, just sans, plus an infinitive. So without talking, sans parler, without thinking, sans parler, sans penser, without doing, sans faire, etc. Okay, really straightforward so far. Brace yourself. So now we're going to have a little bit of a tricky situation potentially. If you're going to use the word without and it's got a subject and it's got a verb in the ing form, have a look at my top example without him saying a word. We need a little bit of a word order change. Okay, so with this time what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put without, that, he, conjugate your verb into the subjunctive. Okay, so look at what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying and just follow my example. So without him saying a word, that would have to change to without that he says a word. Okay, so that would become sans que, il dise, so it's in the subjunctive, un mot. Okay, look at the other example, we went without her understanding, you'd have to change the word order to being we went without that she understands. Nous y sommes allés sans qu'elle comprenne. So sans que, triggering a subjunctive. I'll just point out to you there, that's a cat smudge, by the way. Lucia walked over the board. And my final example, he did it without me laughing, so you'd have to do your word order change. He did it without that I laugh. Il a fait sans que je rise. Okay, now I hope that makes sense to you. I would write all that up. When you've written it up and you've had time to process it, have a look at page 10 of your subjunctive booklets, and can I ask you please for today's work to complete the 2 exercises there. So you're going to translate those sentences at the top into English, and then you're going to translate the sentences at the bottom into French. Remember what I said to you yesterday on email? I know you can use a translation thing online, but I just wouldn't bother if I were you, because at some point you are going to have to do an exam, and you won't be able to have online sources there to help you. Just use word reference for vocabulary, and give yourself permission to make mistakes, so that when I provide you with the answers, you can hopefully learn from them. I'm going to set up a discussion thing on Moodle, so if you have any questions, you can ask me. What you need to do for the discussion board is I'll set it up in News Forum, I think. I don't know, I haven't done it yet, so I might change my mind. I'll put some instructions in Moodle. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer them on the discussion board. So if you have a question, maybe have a review first of the questions that have already been put on there and have already been answered, so that you're not bombarding me with questions that I've already answered. Okay? So, but obviously, any help you need, you know where I am. Okay? Bye.